Have you ever wondered why some people are impossible to forget, while others fade the moment they're gone? It's not about how loud they were. It's about how whole they became. This isn't about playing games. It's about becoming the one they'll regret letting go. The biggest regret someone can have is realizing they lost someone they never truly saw until it was too late. What if you could become that person? The one who doesn't chase love, but becomes the standard. Let me show you how. Remember the time you gave your all to someone who didn't even notice. What if next time, you're the one they never stopped thinking about? This isn't revenge, it's transformation. This is how you become the one they regret losing. There's a quiet kind of power that doesn't need to shout, doesn't need to chase, and doesn't beg to be chosen. In a world full of noise and performance, the people who stand out are the ones who are grounded, real, and whole. In this video, we're going to explore 7 Stoic and psychological truths that will help you become the one they respect, miss, and regret letting go. Let's begin. Asterisk. In a world obsessed with filters, perfection, and polished facades, what if the real magic lies in what we've been hiding? Think about it. Could it be that the most unforgettable people aren't the ones who seem flawless, but the ones who dare to be unapologetically real? Carl Jung, the great explorer of the human psyche, revealed a truth that still resonates today. We're not truly attracted to perfection. We're drawn to authenticity, the kind that feels raw, honest, and human. The 7 paradoxical traits that make someone unforgettable. They're not what society told us to chase. In fact, they're often the very parts of ourselves we've been taught to quiet down, cover up, or feel ashamed of. But here's the twist. The things you've spent years hiding, the quirks, the vulnerabilities, the silent strengths, might be exactly what makes you unforgettable. So many of us spend our lives polishing the surface. We curate our words, our appearance, our online image, while the real power lies deeper. It's in that grounded calm, that quiet confidence, that rare ability to simply be present without needing to perform. Because being unforgettable isn't about being the loudest in the room. It's about being the one they still feel after you've gone. And the Stoics understood this deeply. Marcus Aurelius didn't speak to impress. He wrote to understand himself. Epictetus didn't seek attention. He mastered his inner world. That's the real strength today. Owning your truth so fully that you no longer need anyone's permission to be powerful. So if you've ever felt like you're too much, or not enough, if you've given everything and still feel invisible, this video will flip the script. We're diving into the 7 paradoxical traits that make someone unforgettable. Not through strategy or charm, but by becoming so rooted in who you are that your presence can't be copied, replaced, or ignored. And if this message stirs something real in you, if it comforts you, challenges you, or simply makes you breathe deeper, then I ask one simple, free thing. Tap that subscribe button. That's how we grow this space together, with honesty, depth, and no filters. Now, let's dive in. Let's be honest. Most of us are performing, and we don't even realize it. Not on a stage, not in front of a crowd, but every single day, just trying to keep up. We edit our emotions like we edit our photos. We post smiles while quietly nursing a tired heart. We say I'm fine because the truth feels too heavy to explain. It's become second nature. But here's the catch. When you perform for too long, you begin to lose sight of who you really are. You trade authenticity for approval. And after a while, even that approval doesn't feel fulfilling anymore. Aristotle once said, knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom. But how can we truly know ourselves if we've spent years becoming who the world told us to be? This isn't just about social media. It's about mindset. It's about the quiet ways we dim our light, softening our opinions, dulling our joy, hiding our fire, all because we've been conditioned to believe that being our full selves is too risky, too loud, too much, too different. But think about it. Has anyone who changed the world ever fit into a box? Carl Jung wrote, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are, not who your parents expected, not who your job prefers, not the version of you your friends are most comfortable with. You, the raw, imperfect, evolving version of you. That's where your power lives, not in the polished image, but in the truth that lies beneath it. And speaking of that truth, let's take the first step into it together, as we turn the page and uncover the very first paradox that makes someone truly unforgettable. So, as we begin to strip away the masks and reclaim the truth beneath the polish, we step into something far more powerful than perfection. Wholeness. Carl Jung built his entire psychological model on this idea. He called it individuation, the lifelong journey of integrating every part of who you are, even the parts you've been told to hide, especially the messy ones. Because let's be honest, wholeness, with all its cracks and contradictions, is far more compelling than any illusion of flawlessness. Think about the people who've left the deepest mark on you. Were they the ones who seemed to have it all together? Or the ones who made you feel safe just being yourself, even when you were falling apart? It's the people who showed up with honesty, even when it was uncomfortable. The ones who laughed, without filtering their joy, and cried without apologizing for their softness. Those are the people who stay with us, not because they were perfect, but because they were real. And in a world drowning in performance, fakery, and curated personas, being real is revolutionary. Socrates once challenged us to examine our lives, not just drift through them on autopilot. And part of that self-examination means asking uncomfortable questions, like, where am I pretending just to be accepted? If you sit with that question long enough, you'll start to notice the subtle cracks in your identity, the places where you've traded truth for comfort, authenticity for approval. These aren't places for judgment. They're places that need your attention, your compassion, your courage, because that's where the masks live. And the moment you begin to peel them off, something wild and unfamiliar starts to emerge. Freedom. But here's the truth. They won't tell you. Being real is going to be called too much, too emotional, too quiet, too intense, too soft. But look closer. Every version of too much is really just code for hard to control. And that's the point. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus taught that freedom isn't about doing whatever you want. It's about not being ruled by anything outside of you. When you stop contorting yourself to fit inside someone else's expectations, you reclaim that freedom. You become someone who lives from the inside out, no longer shaped by how others see you, but by how deeply you see yourself. Plato spoke of shadows on the wall of a cave, false images we mistake for reality. How many of us are still living in that cave, still mistaking the edited, acceptable version of ourselves, the one that's easier to digest for the real thing? But authenticity isn't easy to digest. It's bold, it's layered, it challenges people, and that's what makes it beautiful. Because once you stop hiding, something remarkable happens. The people who are truly meant for you begin to find you, not the ones who merely tolerate your shine, the ones who reflect it back, and the ones who can't handle your truth. They fall away, quietly, naturally, without drama. Let them, because you were never meant to be a watered-down version of yourself. You were meant to be whole, fully expressed, at peace with your contradictions. Not everyone will understand that, and that's okay. You don't need to be admired by 100 people. You need just a handful who see you, really see you, and love you not despite your truth, but because of it. So the next time you feel yourself shrinking, adjusting, performing just to make someone else comfortable, pause, ask yourself, is this really me? Or is this just the version of me they'll accept? That one question can change everything. Because self-respect doesn't begin with boundaries, it begins with honesty. And the most important honesty you'll ever practice is the kind you owe yourself. In the end, we aren't remembered for being liked by everyone. We're remembered for being real, with the few who truly mattered. So let your presence be something they feel, not just something they see. Let your authenticity echo louder than your appearance. And now that we've laid this foundation of truth, it's time to explore the first of the 7 paradoxical traits that make someone unforgettable. Once you begin living in truth, not the polished version, but the raw, honest one, something shifts. That truth becomes the very thing that makes you unforgettable. But here's the thing about growth. We all say we want it. We post about it. We chase signs of it. But very few of us truly understand what it actually looks like. Because real growth, it's not just finishing another self-help book or checking off your next milestone. It's far deeper. It's the quiet, courageous act of letting go of old versions of yourself without losing your soul along the way. True growth means choosing to evolve, not because you're desperate for applause or approval, but because you're aligning more and more with the person you were always meant to be. And let's be honest, sometimes people mistake growth for performance. They shapeshift to fit in, not to level up. But fitting in has never been the same as belonging. Fitting in changes your outfit. Belonging changes your life. Plato once said, "The first and greatest victory is to conquer yourself." That's the essence of transformation. It's not about impressing others with how much you've changed. It's about being able to look in the mirror and say, "This version of me, I chose this, not because I had to, Not to survive, not to be liked, but because it's who I am becoming. No mask, no pressure, just a grounded, deliberate choice to grow. Not for them, but for you. And the Stoics understood this long before us. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself every day, waste no more time arguing what a good person should be. Be one. Direct. Clear. No performance. Just embodiment. To the Stoics, growth wasn't about achievements or applause. It wasn't a checklist. It was about character, about building an inner world that stayed solid. Even when the outside world was loud and chaotic, while others were chasing popularity, chasing perfection, or pretending to have it all together, the Stoics were doing the quiet work. The work that lasts. The work that matters. And here's a powerful truth. Evolving doesn't mean abandoning who you are. It means refining who you are. You don't throw away your essence. You upgrade it. It's like updating your phone. The look is still yours. The core is still there. But now, everything runs smoother, faster, smarter. Your identity works the same way. Growth doesn't erase you. It enhances you. You're not becoming someone new. You're removing the glitches, cleaning up the programming, unlocking features you didn't even realize existed. And the truth is, those features were always inside you. Growth simply brings them online. Carl Jung's concept of individuation reminds us, the path to becoming whole includes shedding the parts of you built on fear, on pleasing others, on avoiding discomfort, because not everything you've picked up on your journey was meant to stay. Some beliefs, some habits, some identities, they were survival tools. They served a purpose. But now they're keeping you small. And the moment you recognize that, the very moment you see it, is the moment you begin to evolve consciously. Not because you're trying to prove anything, but because you've started to understand something deeper about yourself. Now, let's be clear. Choosing to grow doesn't mean you dislike who you are right now. It means you love yourself enough not to stay stuck. That's the difference. People who fear change often believe growth is rejection of the present. But real growth, it's the deepest form of respect for the present. You honor where you are so much that you refuse to let it become your ceiling. You say, I've come this far, and now I'm ready to go further. That's self-respect. Socrates believed that the unexamined life is not worth living. And when you start examining your own life, not through judgment, but with curiosity, that's when you stop running and start awakening. As we move forward, let's begin uncovering the first paradoxical trait of truly unforgettable people, one that doesn't demand attention, but commands presence. Once you start examining your life with clarity instead of judgment, you begin to notice things you hadn't seen before. Patterns, where you've truly grown, where you're still stuck, where you've compromised your values just to fit into rooms you never even wanted to be in. And that awareness, it's powerful, because you can't change what you refuse to face. But the moment you see it, really see it, you begin to reclaim your power. You realize you don't have to wait for permission. You don't need a big event or a breakdown. You can begin your next chapter right now. And let's be real. Growth is messy. It's not just globes and breakthroughs. Sometimes it's awkward. Sometimes it's lonely. Sometimes it means having to let go of people who only liked the older, quieter, more agreeable version of you. But that's okay. Let them go. Because you weren't put on this earth to keep everyone comfortable. You're here to keep your soul awake. Aristotle once said, we are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit. And growth is exactly the same. It's not a one-time leap. It's a daily decision to choose reflection over reaction, discipline over impulse, courage over comfort. And sure, you won't always get it right. You'll stumble, you'll fall. But the goal was never perfection. The goal is progress. It's becoming the kind of person who doesn't talk about their evolution, because it's already visible. In how you show up, in how you speak, in how you carry yourself. You'll know you're evolving when your silence speaks louder than your need to explain. When your peace makes more noise than your anxiety ever did. When the same things that used to trigger you now teach you. And the people you used to chase, they start chasing clarity, because you've made it so clear who you are and where you're going. So if you're sitting there wondering if now is the time to change, here's your sign. Yes, it is. Don't wait for rock bottom. Don't wait for permission. Don't wait for someone to push you. You're allowed to outgrow what once felt like home. You're allowed to shift, to stretch, to shed the labels that no longer define you. Because growth isn't betrayal. Growth is truth. Asterisk. And when your growth is rooted in your values, not your fears, it becomes something no one can touch or take away. You don't grow to earn love. You grow because you already love yourself enough to evolve. And that's what makes you unforgettable. Not the version of you who stayed the same for the sake of acceptance, but the version of you who kept becoming, even when no one understood why. So keep becoming, keep becoming. We've been sold a lie, that to be respected, remembered, or loved, we have to be flawless. That we must scrub away every rough edge, erase every past mistake, and wear some perfectly polished version of ourselves, like armor. But here's the truth that hits you only after you've exhausted yourself trying to keep up. Perfection doesn't connect people. Pain does. Struggle does. Humanity does. No one bonds over your highlight reel. They bond over the moments you got knocked down and chose to rise anyway. Aristotle said, knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom. But true self-knowledge doesn't come from rehearsing your strengths. It comes from owning your shadows. From being brutally honest about the parts of you that didn't always have it together. From looking at your flaws and saying, that's mine, and I'm not ashamed of it. Because shame only has power when you try to hide. The moment you bring those flaws into the light, they lose their grip. And in that moment, something incredible happens. You start to take your power back. Asterisk. Carl Jung said it best. What you resist, persists. What you accept, transforms. And speaking of transformation, now it's time to uncover the first paradoxical trait of truly unforgettable people. A quiet power that starts where most would least expect. After all, when you stop hiding the parts of yourself you once feared were too much, something incredible happens. You don't just grow, you transform. And more often than not, it's the very thing you've been tucking away that holds the key to your power. You know that part of you, the one you've been trying to quiet down. Maybe it feels too emotional, too intense, too complicated. Maybe you've convinced yourself it makes you unlovable. But what if that part of you isn't a flaw at all? What if it's your superpower? What if the very piece of yourself you've been hiding is the one that could make someone feel less alone? What if it could lead someone else out of their own darkness? But if you bury it out of fear, you're not just protecting yourself. You're robbing the world of the most honest part of you. The part that makes you uniquely you. Let's be real. We've all got scars. Emotional ones. Mental ones. For some of us, even physical ones. And for years, society's tried to sell us the idea of a cover-up. Cover up your pain. Cover up your past. Hide your sensitivity. Tone down your story. But here's the truth. Your scars aren't signs of weakness. They're signs that you healed. That you felt deeply, fought through it, and didn't give up. That's what makes you magnetic. People don't remember the person who never cracked. They remember the one who cracked, but never collapsed. Let's bring in the Stoics for a second. Epictetus once taught that it's not what happens to you, but how you respond that matters. Your mistakes, your failures, they aren't your identity. It's your response to them that defines you. That's your character. That's your story. And stories don't move us when everything goes right. They move us when the hero walks through fire and keeps going. Socrates said, "Be as you wish to seem." Not perfect, not pristine, just real. Because people aren't looking for idols. They're looking for proof. Proof that being human doesn't mean being broken. And when you show up, fully flaws and all, you become a mirror, one that reflects back what's possible when someone finally stops trying to be untouchable and starts being honest. So let me ask you something. What's one thing you've been hiding because you thought it made you less? One chapter of your story you've avoided sharing because you were afraid of how people might look at you. What if, just what if, that part of your story doesn't make you weak? It makes you unforgettable. What if the very thing you've been ashamed of is exactly what someone else needs to hear, to feel seen, to feel understood? Plato believed that truth wasn't just an external reality. It was something deeply internal. And what greater truth is there than standing in your own story and saying, yes, I've struggled. Yes, I've failed. And yes, I'm still here. That's not a confession. That's a declaration. That's you standing in your full humanity and refusing to shrink for anyone's comfort. Because here's the thing the world doesn't need more of. It doesn't need another filtered personality. It needs realness. It needs people who've been through it and didn't let it turn them cold. People who still care, even after being hurt. Who still show up, even when it's scary. That's the kind of presence that lingers. That's the kind of energy that walks into a room and makes people feel something without saying a word. You don't need to apologize for the old version of you. They were doing the best they could with what they knew. You honor them not by erasing them, but by growing from them. Your evolution isn't about forgetting where you've been. It's about owning it so completely that no one can ever use it against you. So if you've got flaws, welcome to the club. You're not broken. You're just real, and real people. They don't have to be perfect. They just need to be honest, resilient, and brave enough to show up even when they're not fully healed yet. Because that kind of honesty, that's what changes lives. Now let's talk about the first trait, the paradox that seems quiet on the surface, but holds the weight of something unshakable. So once you begin to own every chapter of your story, even the parts you once tried to hide, you start showing up differently, stronger, softer, more grounded. And with that shift comes another quiet realization that changes everything. There's a subtle desperation many of us carry often without even knowing it, a craving to be picked, to be seen, to be validated. And it starts early, doesn't it? We're taught to raise our hands and wait for permission, to play nice, to stay agreeable, and to silently hope someone notices us. But here's the truth. No one tells you. The more you try to be chosen, the less you feel like you belong. Why? Because being chosen means placing your worth in someone else's hands. It's saying, I need you to see my value before I can believe in it myself. And that's not power. That's permission seeking, dressed up as love. But there's a shift, a simple one, and yet utterly revolutionary. Stop waiting to be chosen. Start deciding who gets access. This single mindset change is like flipping on a light in a room you didn't realize was dark. You stop shrinking to fit into someone else's life, and instead you ask yourself, does this person even deserve to be here? Not from arrogance, but from alignment, from respect, from clarity about who you are becoming. Seneca, the Stoic philosopher, once said, as long as you live, keep learning how to live. And part of learning how to live is learning how not to beg for belonging. You were never meant to audition for connection. You're not a product. You're a person, whole, flawed, and evolving. And the right people, they won't need to be persuaded. They'll recognize your energy instantly, not just as valuable, but as rare. Carl Jung believed we project our unmet needs and hidden insecurities onto others. So if someone makes you feel like you need to perform just to be worthy of love, maybe what they're really revealing is their own emptiness, their own inability to see worth without performance. But hear this clearly. That's their lesson, not yours to carry. Your lesson is this. You are the chooser. Your life is your sacred space. Your energy is your currency. Not everyone gets unlimited access just because they ask. Pause for a moment and ask yourself, what if instead of constantly wondering, do they like me? You asked, do they align with the version of me I'm becoming? Not the version that bends for applause. Not the version that shrinks for acceptance. But the version that stands tall, grounded, evolving, and choosing peace over chaos. Because once you shift your focus from being liked to living authentically, something beautiful happens. People begin to respect you not for what you give them, but for how you carry yourself. Plato once said, the measure of a man is what he does with power. And real power, the quiet, steady kind that doesn't need an audience, comes from having standards, from knowing that love, attention, and intimacy aren't things to chase. They're things to welcome when they come from the right place. You get to decide who steps in and who stays at the gate. Not to play games, but to protect your peace. And let's be honest, peace is expensive. You've fought for it, you've earned it. Don't give it away for cheap. There's a kind of confidence that doesn't need to speak, a presence that doesn't need to perform. When you stop chasing approval, people feel it. They sense your boundaries. They notice your self-respect. And something inside them, consciously or not, begins to whisper, this person is different. I don't want to lose this. That's what makes you unforgettable. Not because you were the loudest, not because you were the most agreeable, but because you were whole, and you never handed out pieces of yourself just to be liked. And speaking of wholeness, the next trait on this journey is going to challenge what we've been taught about confidence. After all, when you stop handing out pieces of yourself just to be liked, you begin reclaiming something powerful. Your presence, your energy, your truth. Asterisk. And to anyone who ever smiled at you, expecting less of you than who you really are, hear this. Socrates once said, the secret to change is to focus all your energy, not on fighting the old, but on building the new. So, build the version of you that doesn't shrink to fit. The one who doesn't beg to be picked, or ask for permission to exist. Build the version of you who knows, truly knows, that the right people will never make you question your worth. And the wrong ones, let them go. Release them. You don't need their validation to be powerful. From now on, stop measuring your value by how many people want you. Start measuring it by how true you are to yourself. Because when you walk into a room rooted in that kind of energy, that kind of unwavering intentionality, people feel it. More importantly, you feel it. You walk differently. You choose differently. You stop needing to be chosen because you already chose yourself. And that changes everything. But here's where things get tricky. There's this unspoken rule floating around: don't feel too much, don't speak too passionately, don't care too deeply, be chill, be easy, be low maintenance. Sound familiar? But let's tell the truth. None of that creates real connection. It creates distance. It creates performance. It turns you into a muted version of who you really are. And if anyone has ever told you that you're too much, too emotional, too sensitive, too intense, then listen closely. That's not a flaw. That's a gift. You feel deeply because you care. You express intensely because you're alive. You're not too much. You're just not easy to ignore. Carl Jung taught us that the emotional world is not something to repress, but something to integrate. He said, there is no coming to consciousness without pain. That intensity you carry is not here to break you. It's here to wake you. It's the part of you that refuses to live life on the surface. And yes, it might make some people uncomfortable, but that discomfort, that's not yours to fix. Most of the time, their discomfort says more about their emotional limitations than your emotional intelligence. Let's pause on that word, intelligence. Because emotional depth is not weakness, it's wisdom. It's what Aristotle called virtue, through moderation. Not by suppressing your nature, but by mastering it. Feeling without drowning. Loving without losing yourself. That's the line between chaos and courage. And make no mistake, your ability to feel deeply, that's courage. Because in a world where most people numb out, scroll endlessly, or build walls, you show up with your heart still open. That's not too much. That's rare. So why do people label you as too intense? Because intensity can't be controlled. It demands presence. It asks hard questions. It feels everything. And that kind of honesty, it terrifies those who are hiding behind their masks. Your passion makes them question their apathy. Your tears make them confront their numbness. Your truth forces them to face their own lies. And rather than rise to meet you, they reduce you. Too emotional, too complicated. But let's call that what it is, not truth, but projection. Even the Stoics, masters of discipline, never told us to deny emotion. They told us to understand it. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." And that includes your emotional life. You don't need to tone yourself down. You just need to direct your fire. Channel your passion. Let your emotions inform you, not rule you. That's not weakness. That's strength. That's emotional maturity. That's what sets you apart. You see, once you've stopped chasing approval, once you've realized your emotional depth isn't too much but a mirror reflecting your strength, something profound begins to shift inside you. To know thyself is the beginning of wisdom, and knowing yourself means truly understanding how deeply you feel, and not punishing yourself for it. It means honoring the quiet truth that your sensitivity is not a flaw. It's your compass. It's awareness. It's the reason you walk into a room and instantly sense the undercurrents of what's unspoken. It's why your intuition rarely misses, why your bonds run deeper, and why people who truly know you feel seen by you in a way they've never experienced before. So no, you are not too much. You're simply unwilling to live small. You're unwilling to fake indifference. You're unwilling to disconnect from the things that stir your heart. That doesn't make you difficult, it makes you authentic. In a world that teaches people to shut down, you're choosing to stay open. And that's not weakness. That's strength. That's unforgettable. So the next time someone looks you in the eye and says, "You're too much," smile, hold their gaze, and gently respond. Then go find less. Because you're not shrinking anymore, not to fit into someone else's comfort zone. You're expanding into your full emotional power. You're becoming whole. And the people who are meant for you, they'll never ask you to tone it down. They'll rise to meet you. They'll match your depth. They'll celebrate your fire, not flinch from it. Because people who feel deeply, love deeply. And people who love deeply, they change lives. So don't dim that. Don't dilute it. Be all of you. Be bold. Be passionate. Be honest. Because that's how you leave a mark. Not by being agreeable, but by being real. There's a kind of quiet power that begins to awaken in someone the moment they realize they deserve more. Not in a loud performative way, but in a calm, grounded presence that says, I'm done settling. And when that switch flips, everything changes. The patterns, the one-sided relationships, the draining conversations, the pretending, they all stop. Not because the world suddenly shifted, but because you did. Because once you know what you're worth, the begging ends, the chasing ends. You stop looking for crumbs of love or fragments of attention. You start holding out for what's real. Epictetus, one of the great Stoic philosophers, once said, never value anything as profitable to yourself, which shall compel you to break your promise, to lose your self-respect, or to hate any man. In simpler terms, if you have to betray yourself to keep someone, it's already too expensive. And the people who understand that, the ones who leave quietly with grace, not fire, they are dangerous. In the best possible way, because they can't be manipulated. They won't be guilted, and they refuse to stay where their peace keeps getting shattered. The truth is, most people aren't afraid of losing someone who needs them. They're afraid of losing someone who doesn't, but chose them anyway. And when you finally know what lifts your energy, and what drains it, you stop making choices out of loneliness. You start making them from clarity, and that's rare. That's magnetic. That's the kind of presence people want to earn a place in, not assume it. Carl Jung said, the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. But once you do, you stop needing others to do it for you. And when you're no longer performing to be loved, that's when the world finally sees the real you, the grounded you, the self-respecting you, a version of you that refuses to play small. Once you stop performing for love and start living from self-worth, everything around you begins to shift, including the way people feel your presence. And that presence, it becomes grounding. It's refreshing. It's real. But let's get something clear. Boundaries aren't walls. They're filters. They're not built to push people away. They're meant to let the right ones in. Boundaries say, this is what I allow. This is what I won't. Not out of bitterness, but out of clarity. And that clarity, that's what protects your energy. That's what keeps your soul from living in constant repair mode, always patching the damage caused by people who never should have made it past your door in the first place. Socrates once said that the secret of change is to focus all your energy not on fighting the old, but on building the new. So maybe if you're exhausted from feeling overlooked, drained, or taken for granted, it's time to stop trying to fix the people who can't even see your value. Maybe it's time to build a new standard, one where you no longer bend yourself into pieces just to keep the peace. Because peace that costs you your self-worth, that's not peace. That's just quiet self-abandonment. Here's the truth. Knowing what you deserve doesn't mean you think you're better than anyone. It just means you've finally decided you're not less. And that one decision changes everything. It shifts how you speak, how you love, how you choose. You stop accepting half effort, half truths, and half presence. You don't chase you do require consistency. You stop wishing for fairy tales. You start craving honesty. And slowly, the question changes. From am I asking for too much? To why was I ever settling for so little? Aristotle once said, we are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, then, is not an act but a habit. So let self-respect become your habit. Let saying no when something feels off become natural. Let choosing peace over popularity become second nature. And when you move that way, the world adjusts. The wrong people fall away. The right ones rise. So here's your challenge. Revisit your standards, not your wish list. Not the fantasy. Your non-negotiable S. The things that guard your peace. The things that protect your time. The things that protect you. Because once those are in place, you stop hoping to be treated well. You start expecting it. And that changes everything. Now let's talk about love. There's a kind of love that feels heavy, like pressure. The kind that quietly whispers, don't leave me. I need you to be okay. Asterisk, it's not bad intentions, but it is heavy. It's the kind of love that's fixed instead of supports. And here's why. When love comes from a place of emptiness, it becomes a transaction, a subtle plea for emotional survival. You're not really offering love, you're offering need. And that kind of love, no matter how sincere, will drain both people. Carl Jung said, the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. But it's also where real love begins. Because once you accept yourself fully without conditions, without edits, your love stops being something you need to survive and becomes something you choose to give. You're no longer handing people broken pieces, begging them to glue you back together. You're whole. And when you're whole, your love becomes light. It becomes peace. It uplifts. instead of overwhelms. You see, people often mistake intensity for love. They think clinging equals connection. But real connection isn't built on fear of losing someone. It's built on the freedom to choose them, again and again with no fear, no dependency. And that kind of love, it's rare. Because it's not about possession, it's about presence. When love comes from fullness, not fear, it stops being about possession, it becomes about presence. A presence that says, I'm here because I choose to be, not because I'll fall apart if I'm not. The Stoics understood this. They taught that your peace should never be at the mercy of things outside your control. And Epictetus reminded us, only the educated are free. In this case, emotionally educated. Free from needing validation to feel worthy. Free from giving love just to receive it in return. Because when you've done the inner work, when you've taken time to fill your own cup, you no longer chase love. You radiate it. And that kind of radiance, it's unforgettable. Think about it. When someone walks into a room with calm confidence, when their joy isn't dependent on who's watching, you feel it. It's magnetic. It's grounding. It's healing. And people don't fear losing that kind of energy because it strokes their ego. They fear losing it because it awakens something real inside them. Something stable. Something sacred. But here's the truth. You don't get that kind of presence from someone who's emotionally starving. You get it from someone who knows they're already full. And anything they give is a gift, not a silent plea for rescue. Socrates once said, the hottest love has the coldest end. Because when love is born from obsession, neediness, or desperation, it tries to fill a void that only you can fill for yourself. But when love begins from fullness, from peace you've cultivated, from joy you've discovered in your own silence, that kind of love doesn't burn out, it evolves, it breathes. It doesn't collapse under its own weight, because it's not asking to be saved, it's extending a hand. To walk beside someone, that's why it's not optional to fill your cup, it's essential. Not later, not when someone worthy shows up. Now. Because if your cup is empty, you'll unconsciously drain every connection, trying to quench a thirst that only you can satisfy. But if your cup is full, if you've invested time in healing, in loving yourself, in building an inner foundation of worth, then you give from your overflow. And the right people, the ones meant to walk with you, they won't drink you dry. They'll be nourished by your abundance, and they'll honor it. Aristotle believed that the highest form of love wasn't romantic, but rooted in virtuous friendship. A sacred bond between two people who seek the good in themselves and in each other. That kind of love doesn't cling. It doesn't control. It strengthens. It expands both souls. And you only get there when you show up whole. So ask yourself honestly, am I giving love from a wound? Or from wisdom? Am I offering my heart from fear? Or from freedom? Because love should never feel like a lifeline. It should feel like light. And here's the deeper truth. You don't need someone to complete you. You need someone who complements the wholeness you already fought hard to earn. That's the kind of energy people are afraid to lose. That's the presence they rarely find twice. So take care of yourself first. Fill your soul. Know your worth. And then, when you love, let it be a reflection of your fullness. Not a plea to be filled. Because the right ones, they won't just stay, they'll protect that light. They'll respect its rarity. And you'll feel it too. The most unforgettable energy you'll ever carry is the quiet knowing that you are whole, without needing to prove, perform, or chase. When you choose yourself first, the right people won't ask you to shrink. They'll rise with you. And if this message stirred something deep in you, there's another video waiting on the screen right now that will take you even further. Trust me, you don't want to miss it. And as you continue choosing yourself, filling your cup, and walking forward with calm conviction, remember this, you're not walking alone. Thank you for being here. Thank you for showing up for yourself. And for this moment, being part of Mind of Stoic isn't just about learning ancient philosophy. It's about becoming slowly, intentionally, and powerfully. It's about living with depth, with clarity, with courage. This space exists, not to give you all the answers, but to remind you of the strength you already carry, and to walk beside you as you uncover it. And remember, the journey doesn't end here. We'll be right here when you're ready for the next step.